Turning Red released directly to Disney Plus this month, and it's easy to see why so many people love this film. It's a relatable story about growth, family, and friendship, centering around 13-year-old Meilin Lee.
All about that hustle, am I right?
Pixar's created a great coming-of-age story, but of all the characters in the cast, which ones are the smartest and which ones aren't all too bright? I'm Kyle with Wicked Binge, and this is Turning Red Characters Dumb to Brilliant. First up, we'll be starting with the least intelligent character and working our way up. These characters are not the brightest. Starting out with the dumbest, we have the boy band Four Town. While they are given a fair amount of screen time, they're primarily seen through the eyes of May, Priya, Miriam, and Abby. And beyond the main character's crushes on them, there isn't a whole lot of depth to explore. When Four Town was seen at the concert, they were soon nearly taken out during Ming's rampage on the dome. When they were spotted by Miriam, the boys managed to make their way through the wrecked stage and get themselves free of the rigging they had been left in. It's uncertain what Miriam, Priya, and Abby told the boys to convince them to stay and help, but Four Town came through with that request. They had no way of knowing their song would charge a magic circle. After all, that was something May herself had only learned minutes prior to her own ritual, and she didn't have the chance to tell her friends about the details pertaining to everything that happened. So all Four Town knew was that the girls told them that singing the band's song gave May confidence. They didn't expect to help to the extent that they did, and managed to keep the performance going even with the ritual taking place. They simply didn't question it, and it probably would have been way smarter to just make sure everyone that was in attendance for the concert was being escorted out safely. After all, it's not the brightest move to stick around when a Godzilla-sized panda is wrecking the stadium. Coming in as the second dimmest character, we have Tyler. There isn't a whole lot of explanation we need to give as to why Tyler is so low here. He was a bully that picked on others as a way to cope with his own insecurities. He did things spur of the moment, trying to gain any sort of reaction he could from his peers. Normally, that meant he would mock kids and try to rally others to join in on the bullying, as he was seen when Ming confronted Devin at the convenience store and during their gym class. As the movie progressed, Tyler found a way to use May's growing popularity to his advantage and resorted to blackmail to get her to agree.
Now put that thing away and hear me out.
We're not saying that we support blackmail, but it was an effective tactic. After May, Priya, Miriam, and Abby accepted his love of the band Four Town, Tyler made the right call and decided to spend the concert with them. He knew better than to let pride or embarrassment make him miss out on a chance to openly enjoy something without worrying about what his peers might think. When the girls stuck around to help encourage May with the help of Four Town, Tyler stuck around rather than fleeing. It would have been easy for him to write off May for the sake of his own self-preservation, but he was able to be mature enough to overlook their past conflict and recognize that May was just a girl in trouble. Next up, we have our list of average folk. These guys are, as the name implies, pretty average in terms of intelligence. Not too smart and not too dumb. Next, we have May's close friends, Priya, Abby, and Miriam. These girls made up one of the most encouraging and supportive friend groups in not only Pixar's history, but in all of animation. They never once hesitated to lift May's spirits, and because of that, they helped her achieve something no one else thought possible: controlling the red panda. Sure, encouraging May to use the red panda form so often and in public was not the smartest idea considering May was planning to get rid of the form at the time. However, these girls thought of everything to avoid being caught: a believable alibi, a space they could switch back and forth should Ming show up unannounced, not to mention a plan on how to raise all that money. When May decided to take Tyler's offer and do his party to avoid being exposed to her mom, Miriam had spoken up that it wasn't a good idea.
Are you serious? You can't trust him. It's a trap.
When everything started to go wrong at the party, the girls quickly connected the dots as to why May was upset and did their best to calm her down. During the final scenes, Priya, Miriam, and Abby also managed to catch Four Town before the band fled the demolished stage, using them to help support May as she and her family completed the ritual. Next, we have May's father, Jin. He was a man of few words, but that was mostly because he wasn't really allowed to give his input on anything. But being silent doesn't mean Jin was ignorant. It gave him a chance to watch and observe, meaning he was able to pick up on things that others missed. Jin had been the one to notice May's reluctance before the ritual, and found the tape she made with her friends. He was able to recognize that his daughter was happier when she was confident enough to express herself, and that the red panda helped to bring her more happiness. He'd been the first person in the family to encourage Mei to consider keeping the red panda, rather than going through with the ritual. When Ming transformed and confronted Mei at the concert, Jin rushed into action, grabbing some equipment to create a giant circle around his wife, so that a ritual could be performed. Next up we have Mr. Gao. For his spiritual knowledge alone, Mr. Gao earns a spot here. Not only was he well versed in traditional practices, but he was able to adapt and improvise when needed. During the final conflict, when Ming, Wu, and the aunties had to go through with the ritual again, Mr. Gao managed to find everyone a new vessel for their red pandas among the debris at the crash concert. He was also quick to move into position on high ground, despite the fact that the dome was quickly becoming more unstable by the second. In another tied ranking, we have the aunties: Chen, Ping, Helen, and Lily. The aunties were shown to follow Wu's lead, allowing her to make the call on what needed to be done at any given time. They had dropped everything to travel to Toronto and perform Mei's ritual. They had to be pressed into following Wu's lead again to help Ming, transforming on the spot. However, they were more than secondary characters. They were quick to catch on to whatever was happening. Though they could be distracted fawning over Mei or making a complaint about something, they made an excellent team and adapted quickly. Now we're really getting into the college-bound characters. These are the characters who were just a stone throw away from the top, proving to have high intelligence. First up, we have Mei's mother, Ming. Ming revealed in her conversations with Mei that in her own youth, she had been a dedicated student that achieved high marks in all that she pursued. She was quick to respond when she saw Mei unexpectedly transform at the school, and had even abandoned her car to chase Mei all the way back to the temple. When Mei insisted she could now control the red panda, Ming had the foresight to insist they test the ability to be sure her daughter wouldn't slip up when at school or traveling around the city. However, for as clever a woman Ming was, her overprotective nature meant that she often overlooked much of what was right in front of her. Ming had been well aware that there was a generational curse, or blessing, on the family, yet she did nothing to prepare her daughter for the transformation. When Mei was panicking, Ming misunderstood the situation and instead assumed it had to do with Mei experiencing puberty. Ming loved her daughter but was not great at listening when Mei tried to express her embarrassment.
Who is he? Did he do these things to you? No!
We understand that Ming was only trying to do what she thought was best, but sometimes a sketch in a notebook is a work of fiction, and she really should have heard Mei out before causing a scene in front of everyone. There was also the fact that Ming continuously broke the law in order to spy on Mei while she was at school, and outright called for Mei to explain to the guard that she was her mom and was only bringing her pads. Ming's inability to hear out Mei's concerns or needs was ultimately what pressed Ming to transform after her pendant was broken. She had gone on a rampage simply because she wholeheartedly believed that Mei was being corrupted rather than just accepting her daughter was becoming someone different. Thankfully, in the end, Ming was able to accept that she had a lot of her own issues to work through and apologized for pressuring Mei. Ming realized that she had taught Mei a lot of things that she herself had resented being forced into growing up. It showed a lot of development that Ming was able to reflect and change her behavior. Taking the bronze medal of brains is the protagonist, Meilin Lee. It was revealed in the very first minutes of the movie that Mei was driven. She was an excellent student, getting an A+ average and excelling in all of her extracurricular activities. On top of that, Mei was also efficient. Once she set her mind to something, she did everything she could to make sure her performance couldn't be outmatched. When she realized that her classmates were willing to pay to see more of her red panda form, Mei quickly capitalized on the fact. She was able to use her newfound popularity to earn enough for her and her friends to attend the Four-Town concert. Mei had been the one seen planning all the details they would need for their plan to succeed, assigning everyone a role to avoid being caught. When Ming discovered the evidence of what her daughter had actually been up to, there were some papers showing Mei's grades had dropped. But even with the distractions, Mei was still a B average student, showing that even when she was slacking off, she was still doing incredibly well. On top of all this, Mei was able to be the first member of her family in recent generations to control the red panda. Not only that, but once she accepted the panda as part of herself, Mei was able to shift back and forth between forms easily as she made her way to the Four-Town concert. It was an impressive skill that she quickly had to use when confronting her mom, able to take down Ming despite her massive form far exceeding Mei's. Much like Tyler had, Mei also showed a lot of maturity and growth by the end of the movie. She was able to stand up for herself and make her own choices without the fear she had before. Mei was even able to help her mother's inner child gain some closure, able to accept that Ming had reacted as she did out of desperation to please Wu and protect Mei. Finally, we have our geniuses, the smartest characters in the film. The silver medal for brains goes to Grandma Wu Li. Wu was a woman of complete control. Everything related to the family's image and reputation was a top priority. So when she saw a giant red panda featured on the news running through Toronto, she was able to quickly assess the situation and jump into action. By the time she called Ming, Wu already had the aunties and Mr. Gao on board to perform the ritual. In fact, Wu was shown to be the one to call the shots several times throughout the movie, with not only the aunties, but with Jin and Ming.
Jin, help clear the table.
After they arrived, Wu was able to confront Mei face to face, informing her granddaughter that she was aware Mei was shifting into the red panda out in public. She had been taught to repress the nature of the red panda and push that belief onto her own daughter. She expressed to Mei that she blamed Ming's panda form for being the reason that they were no longer close, explaining that without the transformation, Ming would have never accidentally left the scar we see on Wu's face. In the end, however, Wu was not only able to accept Mei keeping her panda, but was able to overcome her own fear. She allowed herself to transform one last time in order to save Ming from becoming trapped. And finally, taking our gold medal of brains, we have Sun Yi. Sun Yi was by far the most powerful and brilliant in this entire feature. She was able to channel power to gain the ability to transform, and use the gift to protect her family and her village. She wasn't given any dialogue in the movie, but we see between the story told by Ming and Sun Yi's appearance during the ritual that she had great control over her own red panda form, being able to become a massive beast to face an army, and taking on a smaller version of the form when interacting with Mei, no doubt took a lot of practice and control. Not only did Sun Yi have a massive amount of spiritual knowledge, but she was able to help run her home and community in a time of war and chaos, which would have been an impressive feat for anyone during that time. But let us know in the comment section if you agree with our ranking, and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge more of our Turning Red videos, including our Turning Red characters good to most heroic video that we released earlier. But most importantly, stay wicked.